India-China Thaw or tactical pause. Breaking down the latest signals. For years, India and China have been locked in a frosty standoff, marked by deadly clashes, frozen travel links, and hardening positions along contested borders. Now, subtle but significant signals suggest that the ground may be shifting. In recent weeks, a flurry of developments has hinted at a possible thaw, stirring questions about whether the two Asian giants are recalibrating their relationship. The change comes after a prolonged period of mistrust that began well before the Galwan Valley clash of 2020 but deepened in its aftermath. Today, amid a turbulent global landscape and shifting power equations, both sides appear to be testing the waters for renewed engagement. What is driving this moment, and how far might it go? The answers lie in a mix of diplomacy, trade, and geopolitics, and in the challenges that still stand in the way. New Delhi and Beijing are preparing to restart direct passenger flights as early as September. The Indian government has asked carriers such as Air India and Indigo to be ready to operate to China at short notice. A formal announcement is expected during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to China for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization SCO Summit in Tianjin at the end of August, his first trip to China in 7 years. PM Modi is also expected to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping for the first time since their brief encounter in Russia 10 months ago. Passenger flights between the two countries were suspended after the COVID-19 pandemic, forcing travelers to transit via Hong Kong, Singapore, or other hubs. Before the suspension, Air India, Indigo, Air China, China Southern, and China Eastern operated regular services. Earlier attempts to restart flights in January and June failed due to diplomatic tensions. Economic links, long overshadowed by political tensions, are also beginning to stir. In what Bloomberg calls the first such shipment in over 3 years, an Indian diesel cargo is headed to China. The EM Zenith left Nayara Energy's Vadner terminal on July 18 with about 496,000 barrels of ultra-low sulfur diesel. The voyage has been anything but straightforward. Initially bound for Malaysia, the tanker reversed course in the Strait of Malacca and anchored for nearly 2 weeks after the European Union announced fresh sanctions on the Rosneft-backed refinery. It has now updated its destination to Zhoushan, China. The diversion to China coincides with other recent developments in trade and diplomacy between the two neighbors. In another trade signal, Bloomberg reported that Beijing has lifted restrictions on urea shipments to India, potentially allowing purchases of up to 300,000 tons. India is the world's largest importer of the nitrogen-based crop nutrient, and in 2023 nearly half of China's urea exports went to India. Beijing had halted urea sales entirely last year and, while partially lifting the ban in June, kept restrictions on India until now. India imported about 5.7 million tons of urea in the fiscal year ended March 31, 2025. Nearly 20% less than the previous year. Purchases from China fell sharply from 1.87 million tons in 2023-24 to around 100,000 tons in 2024-25. While the planned 300,000 tons is modest, it could ease global supply pressures and help lower prices. The diplomatic thaw has been matched by a resumption of geopolitical links. On July 24, India resumed issuing tourist visas to Chinese citizens after a 5-year gap, and the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra has also restarted. Vice Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had hinted at a revival of business relations, noting, "How far it will go is something we will have to wait and see." These steps follow an October 2024 agreement on patrolling arrangements and troop disengagement along the line of actual control (LAC), which restored Indian troops' ability to access key points and allowed herders to resume grazing in disputed areas. Observers point to U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policies as a factor nudging India and China closer. Trump doubled tariffs on Indian goods to 50% over Russian oil purchases, while extending a tariff truce with Beijing for 90 days to stave off triple-digit duties on Chinese imports. When the India tariffs were announced, the Chinese embassy in Delhi voiced support for India's sovereignty, calling it non-negotiable, and posted an illustration of an elephant, representing India, facing a baseball bat labeled US tariffs. India's sovereignty is non-negotiable and its foreign policy choices cannot be manipulated by other countries, no matter how significant their own ties with India are. Quoted from the _Hindu https://t6blpxmpic.twitter.com 8ydizyamu Jing China Spox _India August 6, 2025 Foreign Policy has reported that Washington may be moving closer to both Beijing and Islamabad in a bid to pull Pakistan away from China. New Delhi's outreach to Beijing has been viewed by some analysts as a way to mitigate any fallout from a US-Pakistan reset. In Beijing, there is suspicion that US overtures to Pakistan might aim to disrupt the China-Pakistan economic corridor or gather intelligence on Chinese weapons used by Pakistan. As Bisbajathar of the Council for Social Development told the South China Morning Post, "I think Trump has pushed India and China closer together," noting that US protectionism is a shared concern for both capitals. Even as diplomatic and trade links show signs of revival, several core disputes continue to weigh on India-China relations. The LAC dispute remains unresolved. China's long-standing defense and strategic partnership with Pakistan also remains a major concern for India. The two describe their ties as an all-weather strategic cooperative partnership, which extends to military technology and nuclear cooperation. This was evident during Operation Sindoor, when Pakistan deployed Chinese-origin fighter jets, PL-15 air-to-air missiles, and unmanned aerial vehicles. Infrastructure projects in contested or sensitive regions add to the mistrust. Beijing's construction of a mega dam on the Yarlung Tsongpa, which becomes the Brahmaputra once it enters India, has heightened water security concerns. In parallel, China is expected to begin work this year on a railway line linking Hotan in Xinjiang to Shigatse in Tibet. The planned route is likely to pass through Aksai Chin, a territory claimed by India but controlled by China, and run close to the G219 highway near the LAC. Swipe left for next video. Even with the unresolved disputes, the incentives for cooperation are clear. As Dominic Rohner of the Geneva Graduate Institute told the South China Morning Post, there are clear incentives to increase bilateral ties, yielding both economic and political benefits. While it is difficult to forecast what will happen, it is in these countries' interest to foster ties, with flights, fuel and fertilizer trade, visas, and pilgrimages resuming, and a Modi-Xi meeting expected later this month. The next phase of engagement will be closely watched by both sides to assess whether cooperation expands beyond the